Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of Monday, May 9th. And to begin our meeting, I will call upon Heather Broadhead to introduce our guest speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our speaker today is Holly Weaver, who is the Volunteer and Match Facilitator through the Community Connections program at the Cross-Cultural Learning Center. She is a graduate of Western University. Her interests include languages, cultural diversity, and community capacity development. She has been with the CCLC in various capacities for 5 years and is especially passionate about advocating for the social engagement of newcomers in the community. Holly will talk today about the volunteer opportunities at CCLC. They have added some new programs and activities since she last presented to us back in the summer of 2020. And she's happy to share them with us again today. Her work at the CCLC aligns with her values of inclusion and volunteerism. In her spare time, Holly enjoys being in nature, studying French and Arabic, and watercolor painting. Holly, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here with you. I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can see my presentation today. Hopefully everyone can see it. As was introduced, my name is Holly. I'm with the Cross-Cultural Learners Center. I'm the Volunteer Match Facilitator. So I work with recruiting and training volunteers to be active in our programs. And I specifically help to support our Canada Connects program that matches up volunteers one-to-one with newcomers to act as family friends in the community. So today I'll be talking about the center as well as our programs. As mentioned, we have a lot of new programs that we've added to our list. As well, many of our programs are now virtual, although we are running some in-person programs at the center as well. So just to give you a little bit of a summary about our organization, the London Cross-Cultural Learner Center is a community organization that exists to provide settlement services and support to newcomers and to promote intercultural awareness and understanding. The CCLC's roots go back to 1960, starting as a global education center focused on connecting Londoners with volunteer opportunities abroad. Over the years, as our organization has grown alongside our community, we have become London's leading newcomer resettlement agency. The CCLC is made up of deeply committed people who support newcomers and those with diverse backgrounds. Guided by our values, collective expertise, and lived experiences, and through strong community partnerships, we work to enrich the London and Middlesex community and to support newcomers as they start their new life in Canada. Our extensive experience is focused on helping government-assisted refugees, refugee claimants, and other vulnerable newcomers settle, integrate, and succeed in the London community. We address their immediate needs as well as fostering long-term community engagement through a wide range of programs and activities. So to give you a little bit more of an understanding about our clients as well, we serve immigrant, refugee, migrant, and vulnerable populations in London and Middlesex. Our clients represent over 130 different countries of origin, including Sudan, Iraq, Syria, Somalia, and Colombia. In the past fiscal year, we served over 9,000 clients with over 41,000 unique services, and these services were supported by over 2,700 volunteer hours. So volunteers are a big part of the services that we offer, and many of those services would not be possible without our volunteer force. 46% of our clients have been in Canada for less than 2 years, and so they have very complex needs associated with their initial settlement period. I'll be using a couple of terms here, and I just want to go over them before I continue. So as I said, the majority of our clients are refugees. A refugee is a person who is outside of their country of origin and has a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. Within that, there are different categories of refugees, and for each, there are different services that we offer at the center. So the first category here is our government-assisted refugees. So these are sometimes referred to as GARs, and they have had their refugee claims accepted and been granted permanent resident status in Canada. GARs receive resettlement assistance from the federal government for a period of 1 year. We also have refugee claimants, also called asylum seekers. These are individuals that are requesting to have their refugee claims heard by the government. And before the Canadian government can establish that somebody who has arrived in Canada is seeking protection as a refugee, the government must review each case. And during that time, the newcomer is called a refugee claimant or asylum seeker. And they have very specific services that they are eligible for as well. And then lastly, here we have privately sponsored refugees. Private sponsorship is the resettlement of refugees to Canada in which the financial costs of sponsorship and settlement support is provided by private groups or organizations. So this might be family members, but it might be church groups, community groups, a larger network of people sponsoring individuals and families. So at CCLC, we actually have quite a wide variety of programs. I encourage anybody to take notes during this presentation because we do cover a lot of different topics, including housing, health and well-being, settlement support, language support, and community engagement. However, of course, I can also always provide more materials to give you a better summary of our programs. So don't worry if you're not taking notes. I am going to start off by talking about the main point of contact many of our clients have with the center, and that's through our WRAP programs and our CSS program. These programs are for government-assisted refugees specifically, so they're not open to any other type of refugee, only those that have been sponsored by the federal government. And the WRAP program, the Resettlement Assistance Program, supports them in the first 6 weeks of their life in London and their life in Canada. We support them with getting them housed. We also give them life skill workshops. So a lot of information on pretty much a crash course on how to be a Londoner and what you need to succeed, including how to take the bus, where to go for certain documentation, where to go for certain services, how to get a job, how to get in school, all of these other things. The CSS team supports government-assisted refugees with accessing resources they may need for their health and well-being during their first year in Canada. And this includes healthy home visits, as well as connecting them with specialized doctors and providing interpretation and support during those appointments. We also have our settlement teams, and this includes our OSN team and the Swiss team. So the OSN team stands for Orientation Services for Newcomers, and these settlement workers work with all permanent residents, so not just refugees, but anybody who may have come under other visas and gained permanent residency at some point in their settlement process. The OSN team supports newcomers with pretty much all of the support, any topic that they have related to their settlement. I like to refer to settlement counselors as guidance counselors because they're not going to do any of the work for the newcomer, but they'll help to guide them in the right direction. So if they have questions about getting their citizenship, if they have questions about getting into a new field or supporting their kids with school, if they have questions about their income taxes, all of these things, the OSN settlement workers can support them with that, and there's no time limit on their experience with the OSN team, like there is with the WRAP and the CSS teams. We support newcomers in this team for 5 or 10 years, as long as it takes, as long as they still need that support. A similar program is our Settlement Workers in Schools program. It's pretty much the same as the OSN team, just based out of schools and run in partnership with the Thames Valley District School Board and the London Catholic District School Board to ensure that there's a settlement worker in every elementary and secondary school in London. And the settlement workers work to ensure that the students and the families have a positive transition into the Canadian school system, working on helping them understand the curriculum, as well as helping them have positive interactions with school staff and their peers. Other programs we have at CCLC include our language assessment and referral services. So this team will evaluate the English language benchmark of our clients and refer them to an ESL class. We also offer translation and interpretation in over 80 different languages. And we have a job search workshop. The job search workshop is an intensive 2-week program that helps to ready newcomers for entering the Canadian workforce. We do mock interviews, we help them with their resumes, and we help them with finding resources on how to get a job. And I'm going to slow down a little bit now as we approach the Community Connections program. So all of those other programs really focus on the bread and butter of settling in London. So getting your documents in order, getting active in schools, getting a job, all of those things. Whereas Community Connections, which is the department that benefits the most from volunteer engagement, focuses on the social integration of newcomers. So we look towards that long-term engagement, long-term sustainability in the community by finding programs that help newcomers with building those broader networks. Our programs help with building informal language development, cultural exchange, social and professional networking, community engagement, sport and recreation, and education. Within this team, we have our Canada Connects program. This is the program that I was mentioning earlier. I partially support this program as well. This program matches up volunteers with a newcomer or a newcomer family. And for a period of 6 months, you operate as a family friend for them. You meet with them once a week for a period of 1 to 2 hours. You get to know them, you get to know their needs, you help them with the basics and the day-to-day that they need support with. So it might be helping them with learning English, it might be helping them with understanding the mail that they're receiving from their kids' schools or from other sources, being aware of any scams that might be targeting them, helping them to identify places they want to go, activities they want to do, new interests they want to pursue in the community. We also organize small group activities for adults and families. These are weekly programs that are run both virtually and in person at the center. So we have programs like our cooking group and our fitness group that run in person at the center. The cooking group utilizes our kitchen, and we choose a different cultural recipe every month and cook together and eat together. This has recently become an in-person service again. And over the past 2 years, we've been running this group virtually, which has been fun, but not as enjoyable as doing it in person, obviously. We have our knitting group, we have a computer group, we have our family mentoring group, which brings together newcomer families with children of similar ages to find activities that they can do together on the weekends. We also have our homework help group, our women's group, social hours, and lots of other special events and activities that we do throughout the month. We also have a youth program. This program is focused on newcomer youth between the ages of 14 and 24. Very much like our small groups for adults and families, these are activities that are based in their interests. These are based in their needs. A lot of focus right now on academic success because many of our clients had a lot of difficulty during the past couple of years with the transition to and from virtual learning. It's difficult to know how to use a computer when you are a newcomer to Canada, when you're still learning the language. And of course, many of our youth have struggled and have fallen a little bit behind their peers. So we really focus on academic success, linking up youth with tutors to help them work on their school work. We also do our health and well-being group with youth, and this focuses on both physical and mental health. So doing workshops on healthy eating, anti-smoking, things like that, as well as workshops on anti-bullying, self-care, and self-image as well. We also have a leadership program that helps to engage newcomer youth in the community with civic engagement and becoming the leader within their social groups and preparing for post-secondary education. We also run a variety of networking programs. These include programs like our Mutual Assistance Network, which brings together newcomers with professional goals to support one another with learning different resources and becoming connected to different services. So for example, if they're looking to become certified in a new field or pursue a new job, this group will bring together the clients with similar interests and help to provide resources and networking within that group. And we also have a group called our Volunteer with Ambition program, which links up newcomers with lower levels of English with volunteer opportunities at community partners so that they can get experience to add to their resumes and to feel more involved in the community. We also run a variety of English conversation circles. We have 9 virtual circles running throughout the week. And we are opening up some in-person circles in June that will be running out of the library systems. These are great opportunities to practice very basic conversational icebreaker English, not thinking too much about writing or reading, but really focusing on introducing yourself, talking about your family, talking about your life. And of course, we also love a good party, although a little bit less so nowadays than we used to do pre-COVID, of course. So we also organize special events, trying to engage newcomers with accessing different parts of the community throughout the year, going to different museums or support services, field trips, going to different parks as well. And each month we try to organize smaller gatherings, and now to help to engage newcomers with socializing outside of their own cultural bubble. And a little bit here before we end this PowerPoint. Volunteering with CCLC is very much a cliche experience where you do get the opportunity to make a difference, to meet new people and to learn about other cultures and broaden your experiences, broaden your own understanding of the London community and how many different and diverse cultures we have here in London. I have a couple of recent quotes that I've collected from our active volunteers to share with you here. So Mary is one of our volunteers that runs the Saturday morning conversation circle that we have. And she says, it is a two-way street. Working with newcomers is rewarding for them and very rewarding for volunteers like myself. We share so much with each other and we learn from each other. Martha is one of our volunteers in our Canada Connects program, matched with a Syrian family. She says, I've simply fallen in love with the Canada Connects family. They are beautiful, kind, loving people, and we have become fast friends. Then lastly, here we have Azadea, who is also a part of the Canada Connects program. And she says, it brings me a lot of joy when I see a family making Canada their home. And this is the type of experience that we cultivate with our volunteers. We really try to make sure that these connections last beyond your experience with us. You are making friends with the clients, and those connections are helping to build that broader network of support in our clients' lives. All right, so that is my somewhat condensed presentation. As I said, CCLC does cover a lot of different topics for our clients. We try to engage volunteers with their skill sets and their interests to find a way that you can be active in the programs. If you have any questions at any time, I would encourage you to reach out to me. I'd be happy to share this presentation with you and any additional material that you are looking for. I'll open the floor up now for any questions related to CCLC and our services.
So if you have a question, just use the raise hand functionality in Zoom and we'll let you ask your question. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Okay, there we go. Holly, how many clients do you have right now that you're serving?
Yeah, so the last year we served almost 10,000 clients.
Wow.
I anticipate that that number is going to be roughly the same. As I said, we support through a pretty long process. So about half of those are newly arrived within the past couple of years, just under half of those. But we also support for many years down the road. So it might not be as intensive as in those first 2 years where we're supporting with housing, we're supporting with medical needs, we're supporting with getting them a job or getting them in school. But overall, we do continue to support for upwards of 5 or 10 years down the line.
And where do you source most of your funding for the operation? I know you may have covered that, but.
Yeah, we are mostly federally funded.
Okay.
So we have a lot of different sources. We have some provincial funding, and then we also have some private funding as well. We do a lot of fundraising and do lots of, we have lots of little funds for emergency needs or specific programs. And the vast majority of our funding comes from IRCC, from the federal government, and it's focused on supporting permanent residents within that. Much of our programs for refugee claimants, for example, come from provincial and municipal funding because those are not traditionally funded through the federal government.
Thank you.
No problem.
Harry.
Yeah, actually, Malcolm introduced part of my question.
Oh, sorry,
Your
sorry,
sources.
Harry.
No, Malcolm, it's a good segue. Having worked with a little bit with CCLC over the last several years, I know that in some cases that federal funding is a little bit of feast or famine, boom or bust, where they the feds in their own wisdom bring in a whole bunch of people and then they say, okay, service them, and you have to staff up on short notice. And then a little while later, poof, it's gone and you have to somehow survive during the thin years. You want to address that a little bit more? Because I know some of your programs are free, some are fee for service, and so on.
Yes, absolutely. So this year has been a fantastic example of that. We had with in the early fall, late summer, we had a big influx of Afghan refugees, and to accommodate for that, we did receive additional funding from the government, but as well, that funding was only for specific teams. So we received additional funding for our RAP team, the Resettlement Assistance Program team, that will work with the newly arrived refugee to get them housed and to get them their basic documents and orders and things like that. But of course, 6 months down the road, those refugees are still needing services and are still active in other programs, and that support often doesn't trickle all the way through the process of being a newcomer. So I think over the past several years, we've recognized the need to be relatively self-sufficient, obviously not fully, we can't achieve that, but to be able to have a bit of a cushion there. So we have our interpretation and translation as our for-profit element of CCLC, and does generate a fair amount of money per year that we can use to support those incidentals as well. We do a lot of fund development. We have a fund development manager that facilitates individual funding projects. So we have our, for example, our newcomer emergency housing fund that is all privately funded through community donations. And this fund supports newcomers if they have any sort of housing emergency during the first couple of years of being in London. So for example, if they have a flood, or if they have to relocate quickly because of some reason and they don't have enough for first and last, they can apply to this fund to support them with finding a new home or whatever it might be. We have lots of those little funds and little ways to be contributing specifically to very specialized needs for clients, as well with the newly with the Ukrainian crisis, and we anticipate getting quite a few newcomers from Ukraine, and they're going to have very specific needs as well. They're not a traditional refugee in the sense that they will not necessarily be eligible as a permanent resident of Canada. This might be a temporary kind of refugee claim for these newcomers. So they are not eligible for our RAP team, for example. They're not eligible for those government assisted refugee services. And so we are looking to connect with the community to make sure that we can find other ways to support them specifically. They are eligible for some of our programs, but not all of them. And so through these types of donations and community involvement, we're able to cushion those, as you said, those feast or famine times. But it definitely is a bit of a circus act from year to year, depending on who is in power and what types of crises are existing and happening in the world. It's very much, we are very impacted by the insecurities, not only in Canada, but globally as well.
Yeah, and in closing, I can only echo those quotes that you had from your three of your volunteers. It is one of the most rewarding experiences you can have. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ron Posno, you have a question? You'll need to unmute yourself. Ron, you need to unmute yourself again.
Forgot. I'm not used to being quiet, Holly. They put these muzzles on me to quiet me down. Anyway, I have one point to make and then two questions to ask. Over the years, I've been very reassured by the support new families and individuals have received from what I call it resettling right here in London, Ontario. And while they start out with special programs like yourself, like Cross Cultural Center, these things extend for years in terms of their extending relationship. So I'm very encouraged by people here in London and their welcoming attitude. Now, my two questions deal with current events. First question, Canada went overboard in welcoming and encouraging Afghans to come to Canada, but they failed in providing the supports to get the Afghan people here. To me, I'm just disgusted. Have you had any number of Afghan people, recent Afghan people here to support in London?
Yes, we did receive quite a number. I think the last time I checked, we had somewhere along the line of 400 across as new arrivals since August. So of course we did already have a fair number of Afghan refugees from various other points in time, but specifically related to the crisis that happened this past summer. I think we're at around the number of 400 individuals. And I would agree with you that I think that the government does not do enough for newcomers in general, but also specifically in response to the amount of individuals that they sponsor. I think that there is a duty of care that we have when we are sponsoring refugees specifically to ensure that we can fully support them in each and every community, not just larger communities, not just communities that are reliant on the cultural groups that might be existing in that community. But I think that we should be supporting more broadly, even in smaller communities across Canada, but that's my little opinion there. But the specific thing to note about many of the refugees that we received from Afghanistan is that many of them came with a wide variety of skill sets already existing. So it was a little bit of a different experience if you compare it to previous campaigns, I'll say, of different refugees. Let's say maybe an easy comparison might be between Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, is that many of these refugees that we recently received were working closely with the government already. So many of them already spoke English pretty well, already had a good idea of how they would want to be active, what field they would like to pursue, were able to articulate their needs a lot better, were able to decide about, so many of them arrived were kind of located to London and then chose to move to other cities fairly quickly in that process. So that 400 number is a little bit, it's a little bit low because several of those families moved to Toronto. Several of the other families moved to Toronto as well. So specifically those refugees had a lot of, it's hard to describe. They had a lot of complicated needs. They were easier, I don't like to use the word easier to settle because of their higher skill sets, because many of them were already at least conversational in English. But then they also were they had very specific needs that weren't as easy to address. So if they were looking to become, to have their post-secondary certifications honored or evaluated, all of these additional things, they wanted to effectively hit the ground running when they got here, get a job, get active, get involved. And that takes a lot more specialized work than I think the government is necessarily prepared for. But I wouldn't say that it's I wouldn't say it's more of a failure than in other instances where we have other refugees that need kind of other more complex support, even from the basics of learning how to use a computer, learning how to communicate in basic English. I hope that answers your question.
Well, it gives a good start. We could have a long discussion on these specific things. Thank you for filling me in on that regard. Now, the most current people to come to Canada, that's obviously in our news are people from the Ukraine. Have we received any here from Ukraine yet?
Not yet. So we are still very much preparing for them. So we've set up kind of somewhat of a task force in collaboration with the Ukrainian Community Center here and various other groups that are ready to support immediately. As I mentioned earlier, the Ukrainians are a bit of a special case because we don't anticipate them being eligible for all of the services because it is a bit of a temporary status for them. So what we're trying to do is bring together community members, bring together volunteers, bring together social service providers to kind of be a brain hub for whatever individualized needs they have when they arrive. So we're hoping to be ready for them as much as we can. And we anticipate they'll be coming in the next couple of weeks, but we have not gotten specific, any specific details as of yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick Coates.
Hi, Holly. I've got two questions, different subjects. The first one relates to real estate and the second one relates to volunteers. With respect to real estate, the market in the London area, as it has right across Ontario, values have soared and driven up huge increases in rental rates and that. So how are our newcomers that are arriving? How are we able to help them in terms of getting appropriate accommodation?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. It is very, very difficult. So our clients, specifically we only support on housing needs with government assisted refugees. So privately sponsored refugees, anybody who's here with permanent residency that's not a refugee claimants are not eligible for our housing support. Our housing support is only for government assisted refugees who receive financial support from the government for 1 year. So the complicating factors here is that, of course, you know, their bill will be paid by the government for that year, but we want to make sure that we're not setting them up for failure when that funding runs out and they have to go on to OW or provide for themselves. So when the rent is unaffordable, it's very difficult for us to prepare them for that transition from government funding to OW, which is often much lower than what they had been getting. As well, we offer, I think it's, last time I checked, I think it's 3 options per refugee. So they can choose between 3 options of housing, but often very comparable, often all higher in cost, especially considering we are working with a partnership of landlords who are able to support. So we have many landlords that are both big and small that are teamed up with our housing workers to help to try to find housing for our clients. But it's not always an easy relationship to cultivate. So when we have such a large scale of newcomers coming in, especially government assisted refugees coming in, you find that they are often having very similar complaints or concerns regarding affordability, regarding quality of housing. And that's a kind of a big problem that goes beyond that first year of settlement. And then on top of all of that, there's the experience of being a new renter, right? We have different expectations often from other places in the world. And so we have the process of giving that life skills training to clients as well, helping them to understand what expectations exist for them as renters in the community. That's another big piece that is often difficult. But the housing affordability is a huge problem for us. Huge.
Yeah. The second one relates to volunteers. And specifically, I'm wondering how many of your volunteers are former customers of yours, because they've walked the walk and talked the talk, and they're probably extremely well equipped to help orient newcomers. So just.
Yes, absolutely. We believe it's a metric of settlement to have our clients be ready to come back and volunteer with us. So it's very much something that we encourage. I can't give a firm figure on it, but I'd say at least 35% of our active volunteers are those who have had lived experience either with us as clients or just through themselves or their family members, their parents, their grandparents who were immigrants as well. So they have an understanding of the process, they have an understanding of challenges that exist in the community, and they want to see the experience made easier for the next round, for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Wonderful. It's my turn to ask questions then. I guess my first question, Holly, is there are commonly two narratives around refugees in Canada. One narrative is they never adjust and they never fit in. The other narrative is they tend to do better than those native-born Canadians that have had all the opportunities, but don't seem to do as well as what refugees do. Based on your experience, which narrative is probably more accurate?
I would say neither.
Okay.
I'd say both of them have their problems. I think it's an interest. I think when we talk about the idea of newcomers succeeding above and beyond residents born in Canada, I think that is I think people see that because oftentimes refugees themselves are highly resilient people, right? Because it takes resiliency to rebuild your life out of a traumatic event. It takes guts. You have to have a lot of personal strength to pick up your life, pick up your family, and completely rebuild. So by that nature, by that kind of natural impulse of having survived what they've been through, you know, the next process, well, it's a challenge. It's a different type of challenge to settle and to become established. It's very much in the nature, I think, of refugees to have that level of resiliency. And as long as they are supported by the community, as long as they receive those basic services that we were talking about that they're due, that is an onus of care. I think that the vast majority of refugees will excel in the community. They will do really well. But then those who don't, those who really struggle, you know, there is a very common denominator of not having access to services. So you oftentimes see a lot of struggling coming from people who are in very marginalized communities. So for example, newcomers that are coming from a crisis that maybe didn't get as much media attention as it does through Afghanistan or through Ukraine. Let's for an example is our Rohingya clients coming from Burma, Myanmar. And the fact that there is a very small Rohingya community in London, Ontario, and therefore very few opportunities for them to network with one another in their native language, a huge responsibility on their end to learn English and to learn it quickly if they expect to be able to excel. And not enough services, not enough supports available, especially during a pandemic, to help them with learning that language. So there are intersecting factors of age, skill set, trauma, and anything that they might be currently undergoing with their families, whether or not they think that they might be able to return home in a 2 or 3 years, the eagerness to set roots in a different part of the world, if you think that you're going to be able to go back to your home. All of these things are complicating factors that really mean that the individuals that don't succeed as well as others are more often have those individualized barriers that are kind of keeping them back. And again, those often are only addressed through individualized services, one-to-one services of mentoring, connecting newcomers with volunteers that can make that impact in their lives, and having caseworkers working very closely with individuals to address those individualized barriers.
Wonderful, thank you. Malcolm, is it going to be a quick question?
It is, Don.
Wonderful.
You're talking about, yes, success of immigrants. There's a Syrian family that moved to Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and they make chocolate. I think it's called Peace for Chocolate or Chocolate Peace. They made chocolate in Syria. The family's there. They make marvelous chocolate bars, and you can get them in specialty stores around London. So they made a great success of moving to this country. So there's
Absolutely.
one example right there. Yeah. Anyway, that's me.
Mhm.
And Harry, you had your hand raised. You'll be quick as well, please.
Yes, I will. Just to echo Holly's comments, and yes, Malcolm, it is Peace by Chocolate. I was going to suggest that as well. We're in sync today, but Holly, yes, our experience has been that if there is close support, be it by family or other people from their ethnic group, and if they have resolved that Canada is going to be their new home, and they're not going to go back to their country, and that's especially for Syria and Afghanistan. It might be a question for Ukraine because recovery there is going to take years and years. But if they decide that Canada is their home, our experience has been with determination and support, they're very, very successful. They start businesses, they buy homes, they get their citizenship, and it's always the next generation that thrives in the new country.
Thank you. So one last question for you, Holly. This one's very quick. If there is a member of the club that wants to volunteer at the Cross Cultural Learning Center, I'm assuming everything is on your website if they want to reach out to different opportunities.
Yes, I would recommend actually just emailing or calling me directly, just because you can apply through the website. It just redirects itself through eventually to me. So it's much faster if you just reach out directly to me. We do have a little bit of a process in that after an interview direct with me one-to-one, I set you up with whichever program you're interested in. You do the departmental training associated with that. We also have 3 online training modules for basic workplace health and safety. And then we do require a background check completed within a year and a half to be active with us. But I'll be with you every step of the way in that process, getting you trained up and ready to be connected with the programs.
Wonderful, thank you. So
Thank you, everyone.
in recognition of your presentation today, the Rotary Club of London has made a contribution to the Polio Plus campaign of the Rotary Foundation to immunize 50 infants against polio. So because of you and your presentation today, Rotary is one step closer to a polio-free world. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And I'm hoping we send lots of volunteers your way.
I hope so too.
The next item of business is the Rotary Ranch Party. And I think this one is more it's done. We had a wonderful ranch party, and I want to actually say thank you. I didn't see everybody on the call today, but thank you to a lot of people that made the Rotary Ranch Party a success. Those of you that attended had a wonderful evening. The music was great. It was a really good time. So big thanks to David and Jim and Diane and Howard for their work on the committee. And then for those that either were signed up as sponsors or lassoed sponsors for the event, I think that's David, Jan, Rick, Jack, Harry, and Elizabeth. A big thank you to you as well. And then for those of you in the club that encouraged friends, family to purchase tickets and attended yourself, or you donated items to the silent auction, or you purchased items at the silent auction. Thank you very much. We will have a more formal report, hopefully in a week or 2, as to how much we raised and all the wonderful things, some more updates with respect to the Rotary Ranch Party. I think the next item on the next fundraiser on the agenda is our golf tournament. So Heather, do you want to promote it a little bit more?
Yeah, just again, saving the date. Dawn will be sending out some information through Club Runner on registering and auction and sponsorship. So same as last year. If you don't get in touch with me, I'll get in touch with you. But please keep an eye out for auction items for us. It's a big part of our cash flow for this. We'd love to be able to hit 100 golfers. We are starting an hour earlier this year for this event. We were a little delayed at dinner last year, so I thought just in case, it just makes things a little more relaxed for us all. And of course, we'll be looking for some volunteers for registration and auction management as well. So you know how to be in touch with me and see what we can do to make this a very successful 5th annual event. Thanks.
And Holly, will you have a price for the meal only for a bunch of us? Oh, sorry, Heather, we have a price for the
Holly
meal?
might, but Heather will.
Yeah, yeah, sorry about that.
I will. I haven't got that detail done, but those are some further details that will come. But yeah, absolutely. We'll try and fill them to capacity and make this a partial fellowship event
Sure.
as well. So
Thanks.
yes.
Yeah, and if you haven't been out to Witter Station recently, they've really been doing a lot of work out there. It is a really nice place to visit. Another quick reminder, we are returning to in-person meetings later this month. That means that next Monday, we do not have a meeting. You will have Monday free, and I believe one of our committees has already taken over that meeting time for one of their committee meetings. So that's perfect. That's why we're doing this, is to make it a little bit easier for committee meetings and things like that. We will be having a meeting, an in-person meeting on the 23rd at the Highland Golf and Country Club at 6 p.m. We'll be doing more communications around that in the next week and a bit, and that will be our Community Paul Harris Fellow presentation, as well as time for fellowship. And then at the end of the month, the 30th of May, we will not have a meeting, and we will then make sure that everybody's aware of what the dates are going forward in June, July, August, and September. A few quick reminders. Our next meeting is not next Monday. It will be the following Monday, which is the holiday Monday. It's going to be in person, more details to follow, and it will be our Community Paul Harris Fellow presentation. The next Satellite Club meeting will be Tuesday, May 17th, and they will be having a speaker from Greener Homes London. We have a board meeting the following day, Wednesday, May 18th. As always, cocktail hours tomorrow, Tuesday at 5 p.m. And then the coffee clutch is Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. And that is everything for our meeting today. Just a reminder that we in Rotary serve to change lives, and hopefully everybody will go out there today and hopefully have a positive impact on someone else's life. Thank you very much and have a great 2 weeks.